Good morning and welcome to another in Liberal Judaism series of Live in Conversation. It's a real pleasure this morning to welcome into the Liberal Judaism studio the President of the Board of Deputies, Marie van der Zyl.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. And I know that we have a lot of questions in from our members watching at home. And I also want to encourage people that it's not too late. If you do want to send in your questions, we will try and get to them all. Marie's here for the next hour, and I know she's keen to answer as many questions as you have. So please keep sending in your questions and we'll try and get to them. Marie, I want to begin by just asking you to tell our watchers at home a little bit about yourself and your journey to the board, because I know while many of them may have seen you in the Jewish press and even in the national press, they maybe don't know who you are and what your story is.
Well, thank you. So my story is a bit of an unusual communal entry. I started off quite traditionally. I used to go to, as a child and into my teens, Jewish Lads and Girls Brigade and B'nai Akiva. Then I got married, I had children, and I'm afraid that I wasn't very involved in the Jewish community at that time. I had my children, as I said, two girls that are now 14 and 15, and I became an employment lawyer. In 2008, I unfortunately had thyroid cancer, and after I'd had time of reflection, my synagogue mentioned that I might want to do some communal work, and it was suggested that I go to the Board of Deputies because there were mainly more elderly gentlemen there at the time, and they thought that I might have something to contribute. So believe it or not, I only became a deputy in 2012, which really isn't that long ago. So I can't give you a very long journey. As an employment lawyer, I'd acted for a lot of Jewish organisations over the years, but my entry into it was very, very fast, and it came about from Rabbi Julia Neuberger and Simon Myers from West London Synagogue, who suggested that I stand for election.
Thank you. I think it is really interesting for people to hear, to know that you can have such a quick journey to being able to have such say in the Board of Deputies. But even in that short period of time, I think you've probably seen quite a few changes. You mentioned there that it was quite an elder male environment traditionally. Do you think that's changed over the last few years?
Oh, it's absolutely, definitely changed. And, you know, it's never too late to volunteer, never too late to get involved. So I'm the second female president in 260 years. I'm the first president that belongs to a progressive synagogue. I have 3 vice presidents. 2 of those are women. And we also, for the first time, have your own, you know, Gillian Meron. She is also our first female chief executive. So in terms of the management structure and election at the top end of the Board of Deputies, it's definitely changed beyond recognition. There are a lot of women deputies, and I will say, in defence of the board, there were women deputies before women got the right to vote in this country in the general election. So the board has always been open-minded. And I think you'll find that things have changed. And can I say, for the first time in 50 years, we also have a returned Haredi deputy, which I think is absolutely excellent. So I think that our diversity is changing all the time, and we're changing our constitution as well as we speak at the moment. So we want to be much more inclusive.
Maybe you could say a little bit more about that changing of the constitution and what that might mean for the Board of Deputies.
Well, I'd like to, but we're going to. You can listen to it all on YouTube. We're going to have a series of debates. It's all about inclusivity, having an up-to-date, modern, fit-for-purpose constitution, and changing our structure from what is an unincorporated association into something, as I say, that's fit for purpose. But in terms of memberships, we want Jewish organisations to be able to to join more easily. It's actually very hard to become a member of the Board of Deputies in terms of all the paperwork, the meetings, the elections. So we want to make it a bit more realistic. And also there's lots of people we know now that don't always come to synagogue, that we want to find a way to make it easier for people to be included. It's all about wherever you are as Jews, we want to hear from you. Everybody's got a voice, and I want to make sure that we do that. Even young people, we're currently organising at the moment a young person's plenary, which we hope to take place in August. So it's all about everyone having a voice. Now, can I say that everybody may not agree? I used to say 3 voices, 10 opinions, but I now say 10 prime ministers. Everybody's a prime minister. Everybody's got a view.
Thank you, Marie. I think that is something that's talked about a lot. Probably liberal Judaism is not alone in having being a movement that has a diverse spectrum of opinions within it. And so I think we can all imagine how difficult that is for the board to be able to be representative of that wide variety of opinions. But how do you deal with that? What are some of the techniques that you use to decide how you speak to that representation?
Well, you've got to also remember, I hear from lots of people, it can be thousands of people, whether it's emails, letters, petitions, videos. The degree of representation has got really, really, really sophisticated. My aim is for the board to be a place where people can give their views, where there is tolerance, where there is respect, because sometimes things have happened, and particularly the other year, where I think people were treated quite disgracefully. So I want to make sure that this is a place for different voices to represent the full diversity, beauty and spectrum of the Jewish community. And sometimes we don't always agree. There's nothing wrong if we don't agree, but I think it needs to be respected that there is disagreement, and we need to deal with that in a civilized way. And we wouldn't be Jews if we didn't disagree about a thing or two now, would we? So
no, I think that's very true. I think that's very true. But I'm interested about how you decide where the board positions itself on an issue when there's such diversity in the community.
There's generally consensus, and I am always someone, as you will know yourself. I telephone, for example, all of the denominations. I don't just sit there and say, well, this is what we're going to do. I'm very accountable to all the deputies on the floor. I've got a fantastic team of honorary officers and staff. But take, for example, burial. We've had the problem with Mary Hassel, the coroner. Everybody was supportive of that. I've phoned everybody. I've spoken to everybody. That's something where we could all agree that there had to be respect for religious traditions. Now, traditions in relation to burial might differ, but nobody actually differed that we needed to campaign for those traditions to be still kept, so that she couldn't have what she had known as her cab rank rule, which was held to be discriminatory, and that faith burial is respected. And we do try to work with minority communities. That's really important to me, our interfaith relations. And sometimes, I know you're going to probably ask me a question or two on Israel, sometimes there are situations where I can see that the board can't say this is the position on behalf of the entire Jewish community, because I can see that there is division of opinion. There is always division of opinion from the different denominations as well, and it's for us to make sure that everybody has their chance, whether it's in a government department, to be respected. But certain things, for example, the terrible, vile, racist killing of George Floyd, I've issued the statement condemning that. We've had our Commission for Racial Inclusion that we've said we're having at the Board of Deputies. We know that everybody is on board with that. We can speak for the entire community because we are all against racism. But as a group, we are the envy of every other faith community. Whatever we think about our representation, no other faith is represented as well as the Jewish community. And it's amazing that we can continue to advocate for everyone, but we don't try and stifle people's voices. There's respect for other views. But as I say, sometimes it can get a bit heated, and that's happening at the moment. But how wonderful that people care, that they actually want to have petitions, they want to talk to us. There isn't apathy. That would be the worst thing. So from my perspective, I'm over the moon that people care about being Jewish and care about the issues that matter to Jews.
Thank you, Marie. I wonder whether there's you could give us a sense of what are the matters that Board of Deputies feel comfortable to speak on. Are they cross-communal? Are they just matters that involve the Jewish community in terms of the outside world? Are they just internal, or are they is the Board of Deputies spectrum across every issue?
Yeah, we are the first port of call for government and the media in relation to representing the Jewish community's interests and concerns. And of course, in recent years, a huge concern has been the situation with the Labour Party and anti-Semitism. And you have to remember, if I'm speaking for the Jewish community and people don't agree, I will hear pretty quickly. There's no way that anybody is quiet, but we are a very, very strong voice, and there's no facet of Jewish life, region or denomination where the Board of Deputies doesn't speak up for the community's interests, whether it's safety, religious freedoms, speaking up for Israel's security and for the right to exist. And with the growing challenges, we really need to have a strong voice. But if that voice has different concerns, different needs, we also need to be able to be grown up about it and recognise that, because we're here for the full diversity and spectrum of the fantastic Jewish community that we are.
So the Board of Deputies then would be comfortable to make a statement that said, we recognise we're not speaking for everybody in the Jewish community over this, or this is not the consensus opinion?
What I have at the moment in relation to the issues around annexation, I've reflected and I've said that there is no consensus. I've had lots of people wanting to tell me that there is consensus, but there isn't, because lots of voices have expressed different concerns. I can tell you what I think the overwhelming majority view is, which is a different view to a consensus. The overwhelming view so far that I know about is not to speak out against annexation, but it's not for one reason. There are nuanced reasons which could change. One of the reasons is lots of people think the Board of Deputies should be here for British Jews, shouldn't be speaking about Israeli politics. We don't have any influence in Israel. Some people think we shouldn't be talking out at all. Baroness Altman has sent me a video. She thinks that it will be encouraging anti-Semites and people that don't have Israel's welfare at heart. But within that group, there may be people privately that aren't in favour of annexation, but that's different to actually speaking out against it. We know people have worked very hard with petitions. I met a couple of weeks ago Jack, who with his colleagues, they'd signed a petition for 500 people. So we're very happy to have those discussions. But there isn't consensus. But all the organisations, we need to carry on working together. I still want to have unity amongst the community. I think that's really, really important. But there is clearly a division of opinion. And if annexation happens, and I say if, opinion could change again depending upon what happens next. But no.
Thank you, Marie. That's I think that's really helpful. And as you've taken us into the topic of annexation, which I think is certainly one that many communities are speaking about in depth, and we saw liberal rabbis recently make a statement on annexation, and we've had many questions in specifically on annexation in the board's statement, and I cannot possibly try and get to all of them, because but I will read one question which I think sums up a lot of the questions that have come in, and it says, with reference to your statement on Israeli government's annexation proposals, that you say that the board does not in good faith support one view over another. However, isn't silence not a neutral position? Rather, the absence of dissenting voices is taken as implicit support for actions. Therefore, by not issuing a statement that expresses the range of views held within the Jewish community, including those opposed to annexation, the board's silence is actually supporting the views of those in favour of the Israeli government's annexation. By not, at the very least, giving voice to the range of views, the board is therefore, in essence, supporting the proposed actions of the Israeli government. Many of us in the Jewish community feel that the Israeli government's proposed actions are based on a process that, through the nature of its conception, the scope of its planned implementation, and by the very nature of its intent, makes a mockery of the board's claims to emphasise our continued belief in a negotiated two-state solution, leading to a secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. And so that's a direct quote from the board statement on Israel. And that kind of, I know that's a long question, often like when you say to people at the board, don't make a statement, make a question. But I wanted to try and find one of our questions that kind of summed up a lot of what people were thinking. And their main point is about, isn't by the board not making a statement in times when they've otherwise chosen to make a statement on Israel, on politics in the UK as well, just an indication of support effectively for annexation?
I don't understand why people are saying we're not making a statement. I've actually made a statement. It's a very clear statement. And I think I'm the first president of the Board of Deputies that's ever said that there isn't consensus in relation to the community's views on Israel. And this is obviously now leading to a lot of debate. So the statement is very clear. There isn't consensus. So many people, as I say, want to write, send petitions, videos on all sides. Some people are actually advocating annexation in the community as well. The statement's very clear. There is division, and the board's position is very, very clear. We also support a two-state solution with a secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. And given the variety of views exist in the community, we're not taking a fixed position on which town should sit on either side of the border, and we will be delighted to accept whatever the Israelis and the Palestinians agree. And that is the position. And in relation to Mr. Netanyahu in general, can I also stress we are a charity, we are a non-political organisation. We don't take part in Israeli politics any more than we do in British politics. And we have to, work with the government of the day. And it's a very difficult position. I understand that, but I don't accept the board has not made a statement. It's obviously not made a statement in the way the person or people that have asked that question. But I reflect and accept the division in the community. It's not trying to be hidden in the way perhaps years ago it wasn't talked about. It is being talked about, and I've got to make sure it's with respect and people aren't abused for their different views.
Thank you, Maria. And I also think that we have to give some credit for the fact that you are here speaking very publicly to our community, and I know that we do appreciate that. But it also did sound from what you said that if annexation does go ahead, that there might be a different statement on the actions within Israel, particularly if it did. I mean, you mentioned Palestinians there and Palestinians staying there. That actually we know at the moment it's a very unilateral annexation. The proposed plans, and there are no Palestinian negotiators around the table. That were that to continue, that maybe the board would have something stronger to say.
I think this is all very speculative. There's no indication that there is going to be annexation. If there is, and how it's done, that may alter people's opinion in different ways. And I just think at the moment it's not happening. And if it does, then we all have to wait and see what happens. But there is a huge variety of opinion. And I think it's fair to recognise that, and for people to have the space to put forward their views. But this is certainly not one way. But the majority of opinions that I'm aware of, although we don't have any firm data across the community, is that people feel that the board should not be commenting, and the board is in the right place. And you have to remember that I'm speaking as the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, and I think that is the right place for the board, because we have to be here for everybody. We represent all Jews, whether or not they're at the Board of Deputies, and we have to make sure that we can be a place where we can do that. So this is a difficult situation. I accept that, and I accept the strength of views, and I welcome people coming forward with their views. I want to thank people for the effort that they're actually putting in to express those views. I think that's amazing.
Thank you, Maria. And I know that will be important for people to hear, that they can continue to reach out to you and let you know their opinions and their feelings of on that. And I think one of the comments that we've had that isn't so much a question, but is how important that is for people to hear the voice of the board on those, so that in order that in other areas of social justice that they can feel like the board speaks with a strength in those areas as well. One of the key areas for liberal Judaism over the last years, Mark Regev being the ambassador for Israel, is very much as liberal Judaism particularly. We felt that we had somebody that we could talk with, somebody who was very open to our community, to hear our voices, someone that we could go to when there was things that we were concerned about in Israel, particularly over progressive issues. We have seen, obviously, alongside many other people, that the Likud settlement minister, Tzipi Hoteleti, has accepted Netanyahu's request that she become the UK ambassador. And as you can imagine, many of our other questions come in about concern about her appointment. There have been also petitions across the community asking people to reject her appointment, and I'm wondering how the Board of Deputies feels about her. I mean, we know that Ambassador Regev was very, very present across the communities, made a real effort to be in all the communities. Our initial view might be that we could expect something very, very different from this new ambassador. And I'm wondering how the board feels. We've seen a few posts from board members saying that they're looking forward to inviting her to the Board of Deputies. But I'm interested to hear how you feel about this appointment.
As you will expect of the President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, we will be gracious to the ambassador that's been appointed by the State of Israel. And she's the first woman. I think that deserves to have a lot of credit. I do want to stress that I have been to Israel. I have seen Prime Minister Netanyahu. He gave me 45 minutes of his time after I was elected. And I did speak to him about progressive issues of concern, specifically including how progressive Jews are treated in Israel, prayer at the Kotel. I've also been in meetings with President Rivlin, where the World Jewish Congress has also put forward those concerns. And I want to reassure your community that when the ambassador comes over here, those concerns will still be put forward. And as you know, I'm a member myself of a progressive community, the first board president to be a member of a progressive community. So those concerns will continue to be advocated. And she has actually spoken 3.5 years ago at the Board of Deputies Hanukkah party. And I'm sure that when the new ambassador arrives, she will also be most gracious and want to learn about the community. But we will fully continue to advocate for the concerns of British Jews. I don't want anyone to be in any doubt of that. But she hasn't arrived. She's had a political role in Israel, so I think we need to honour her position, and we will no doubt form closer communal bonds with her after she's here. But she is a young female, the first female ambassador, so that I think also should be taken on board. She did have an article last year expressing concern about the Board of Deputies manifesto, which advocates a two-state solution. And that article has recently been in the Jewish press again. And I'd like to also reassure everybody that the board is not going to be changing its support. We are going to continue, and we stand by advocating for the two-state solution. So I do not see any change.
Thank you. I think that's important for our members to hear, because she has spoken. She is an advocate of a unilateral West Bank annexation, and some of her language has been inflammatory at best. And I think we would hope that while we hope that relations will be built with her, and that maybe she'll also learn from the community in the UK, that the board would challenge those views alongside many of us. I want to.
I'm here. Can I just reiterate that I'm here to represent all Jews, and that is going to continue. And it's very important that everybody knows the board is supportive of the two-state solution. So we aren't going to be changing our view, and we hope that we will have a very good relationship, all of us, with the new ambassador. And I'm sure she's very much looking forward to coming here. She knows what our views are here, so she no doubt will be taking that on board, and she may have a little more nuance perhaps in some of those views once she gets to know us.
Yes, one can only hope, and I hope that she knows that she's also invited to come, just as Ambassador Regev has, and you have as well. That we hope that she'll be in public conversation with liberal Judaism and liberal Jews, amongst whom there is also a wide spectrum of views. And I wouldn't want people to think that there is just one view either. I want to, before coming on to some of the other questions that we've been sent, is to come back to, you mentioned about this being the first female ambassador to the UK, and you've spoken about also being the second female president of the Board of Deputies, and Gillian being first female chief executive, and we've seen that the GLC has appointed 2 women as their interim directors. And I'm wondering whether you think that the space for women in the Jewish community has changed, and whether, I mean, it's changed certainly in terms of our public presentation, but has there been a change behind the scenes as well? And do you think that there is still some work to be done?
That's a very good question. Okay, I think the space has obviously changed for women publicly, in that women are getting roles, we are getting elected. When you talk about behind the scenes, I would say no, they've not really changed. I think it's very difficult at times being a female leader, in terms of how you're perceived, how you're treated, what the expectations are. But for me, the best part of the job of being president of the Board of Deputies have been the communities, getting to know the real people. I spend a lot of my time traveling on Shabbats to different shuls. I've even been around the world while we've been on Zoom. That's what matters, and everybody's been very welcoming. But I think it's still a difficult space for women, and in my job you have to have a very, very thick skin. I receive a lot of abuse, and that's something that I think a lot of people would find quite difficult, or don't perhaps appreciate. But certainly in politics, for example, Luciana Berger, she received a huge amount of abuse, and it's a tough. But we mustn't complain, because if we want to have roles as women, and it was also yourself, and congratulations on your role. It's not all plain sailing. It's not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of the journey. But you know, in this my triennium, we've probably had some of the worst issues since the Second World War. We've had Jeremy Corbyn. We've had anti-Semitism, just as we thought we might have started to turn a corner. Then we've got coronavirus. So we've had some huge challenges, but we're not alone. Our European and worldwide colleagues have been amazing. I just want to say I'm also the chair of the Council of the European Jewish Congress, and I want people to know that we work very much with our sister communities for best practice, for support. They've been wonderful here. They've managed to get me thousands of face masks and things to distribute, because in the early days of the pandemic, it was very, very difficult. And just the support that we get from Jews all around the world is incredible, and they're very pleased to have a woman leader. But when I turn up at these meetings, I'm often the only woman at that level. Yes.
Thank you. I hear you when you say we shouldn't complain, but
No.
at the same time, I wonder what could be done by us as people who do hold these positions, but also by our allies to maybe expose some of the continued misogyny within there, because it's not just external. I think what I hear you saying is this is not just an external problem. It's not just the Luciana Berger and the crossover between anti-Semitism and misogyny, but actually there still is an issue within the Jewish community over, and I wonder whether what is there anything that we can do about it?
Well, there's also the elephant in the room, which is, do women in senior positions support other women? And I think it's easier when you have women that are coming up through junior positions. But that's also something else I think that's very important. But at the end of the day, and I've only ever been, this will surprise you, to one women's meeting, which was quite recently.
We were both there. We were both there together at the launch of the relaunch of the Jewish Women's Alliance. I want to give them a shout out, because they're beginning some of this work.
That's right. So I hadn't been to a women's group, so I've ignored the fact that I'm a woman, and I've just got on with it. And I think you can't get given a job because you're a woman. You have to be able to do the job like anybody else. But we deserve the same equal treatment. People shouldn't not want us to be in post because we are women. I'm not asking for anything different. I'm just asking to be myself. And I think people have been very good, because this really is probably the most difficult time to be the president of the Board of Deputies with the challenging issues. So you know what? Credit to women. We've done very well. I think we should think that. And I think it is tough, but I think any leadership position is tough. But it is difficult within the community. Outside the community, I think it's a bit easier, because people have got used to women, and this is a very, very different look at the Board of Deputies now. To have all these women in these positions, and I think the community, the ordinary people in the community, I think have been exceptionally good about it. And also to elect somebody who's a member. I'm a member of United Synagogue as well, but who's a member of a mainly progressive synagogue. Now, I think that really deserves something, because that does show that people are much more open-minded and accepting of people and their abilities, because there are definitely less progressive synagogues within the Board of Deputies. So you have to appreciate that to be elected, I would have had to have the confidence right across the denominational spectrum. And I think that's really commendable that people have actually done that at the most difficult times, and that deserves, whatever people think about different views, that deserves to have respect.
Yes, I think it is important to recognise that women are appearing in these roles. I think also, though, it remains incumbent on us to call out misogyny, whether it's something that's internal within our own communities, and none of us are free from that, can say that we've moved away from that completely, even in the most progressive of environments.
Yes, if you're asking me, do I think there is misogyny left? Yes, I do. I'm not going to name individuals.
I don't think anybody's asking you to do that.
No. Do I think it's all suddenly disappeared? No, of course it hasn't. But we have to deal with it, and they'll see that women can deal with these sorts of issues. We don't take any nonsense. Well, I won't take such nonsense at the Board of Deputies. So yes, but it's ongoing.
Thank you. And then we on Thursday had our, we have weekly meetings for chairs and rabbis of our communities, or their COVID leads, or for people in our communities dealing with specific issues. And we were delighted to welcome somebody from the Board of Deputies this Thursday when we were beginning to begin our own tackling of looking at what we can do to support Jews of colour within our own community and to amplify their voices. And he was telling us about the survey that the Board of Deputies are carrying out, and I wondered whether you wanted to say anything. We've had a few questions in about what is the board doing and what's this survey about.
Well, it's going to be a commission, and it's going to be chaired by Stephen Bush, the very eminent journalist with the Statesman. And I think it's very important that as Jews we deal with the issues that really matter, and we're not hiding behind this. And it's very sad that we've been sickened by the death, as I said earlier, of the senseless, vile, racist killing of George Floyd, and the scale of violence and prejudice that Black people face on both sides of the Atlantic. I've always felt very strongly about this. I'm also by profession an employment lawyer. I've dealt with discrimination all of my professional career, and the outpouring of solidarity with the Black community from many British institutions, it's really been heartening, and it's got to be matched by willingness now in the community to learn from this and strive to be a much more welcoming environment for its own Black members. And yes, as you've said, lots of individuals have now been in touch, and it's very important that we now find a way to help. We're currently drawing up our terms of reference for the commission, and I think that Stephen Bush, as I've said, is a very eminent Black journalist, and we're very honoured that he will do that. And as a first step, we're now inviting Black British Jews and Jews of colour to come forward anonymously if they want to share their experiences in the community. It may be good, it may be bad, so that we can then begin to build a picture of what exactly is happening. And then we want to take the lessons that we learn, we want to take it to Jewish charities, synagogues, schools, youth movements and other communal spaces to discuss best practice, challenges together, and how we can as a community overcome those challenges. And Anthony Silkoff, as you will know, is here ready to take advice. And I also want to commend, whilst I've mentioned Anthony, Lauren Keeles from Liberal Judaism. We are honoured as well to have both of them at the board. We're very lucky, and this is going to be a very big project. And I think it's very important that Jews stand out against prejudice. We know what it's like to suffer prejudice, and it's right that we also learn the lessons we need to learn, and also that we stand by our beliefs in this country of what we think we should be doing as a community. So for me, I'm very proud that we're going to be doing the commission. It's at the heart of my core beliefs. So this will take some time, but I hope it will be very important for all of us. And it's really been welcomed. I have to say, everybody's been very supportive.
Thank you. I think it became very abundantly clear, even though we took it was a relatively small meeting, it was very representative across our communities, or our communities were well represented on the call, and it became very clear that people were very glad that the Board of Deputies were providing a chance for people's voices to be heard. But equally, that it was very important that as a community we recognise that this is not somebody else's issue, but actually an issue within our own community, and we have to accept that we have not always behaved in the way that would have been expected of us as a Jewish community towards Jews of colour within our own own communities. And so I think it's the general feeling was very, very supportive of the board's move to recognise this. And I hope that it's also an impetus for all of us across our communities to do the work that we need to do, and not to just rely on the board to collect views, but actually that will be a chance to lead to some action. I've had a question which come in about whether or not you plan to stand for re-election, as your predecessors did not, and another one which kind of ties in, I suppose, which maybe you want to take both together, which is, with all the demands online and globally, how do you balance this role with the rest of your life?
Okay, I first did this role because I was very grateful to be saved. I'm a cancer survivor. And I believe that I had to give something back. So I'm very self-motivated, and I just feel still got young children. I had children a little later than many people, that I need to make sure that they've got a good future. So because of that, I've got the drive to continue. I wasn't involved, as I said earlier, in communal politics from a young age. So I'm still full of bouncy and full of energy, and also I've managed to come to the community with a relatively fresh perspective and an experience of what it's like to be outside the community. I didn't go to a Jewish school. I was only one of only 3 people that were Jewish in my year, and I've experienced anti-Semitism. I haven't grown up in a bubble, so I think in many ways I'm also able to face many of the modern challenges of today. My grandparents, my grandfather was a kinder transport survivor. They made Aliyah in 1969, so I've gone to Israel as well for many years. I've always been a Zionist, and I've always loved our youth organisations, particularly Jewish Lads and Girls Brigade. So I'm driven to want to do this. You're the first people that actually are asking me online, am I going to stand again? It takes years now. I've been elected to build up contacts, political, communal, and this is up and down the country, even synagogues that aren't in the board, even as far afield as Aberdeen. We've built up our contacts with the palace. We've had that wonderful reception last year. We are in a time of great need, and coronavirus is going to have an impact for a long time. Lots of charities are going to be suffering. People are going to be suffering. I will at this stage say that I do intend to stand again. How do I balance my life? I'm just on adrenaline, to be honest with you. I'm very focused. I work day and night. And Jess Phillips, she said in our meeting we had in Birmingham, she said, never waste a good crisis. And the crisis has been awful, every tragic loss of life. It's been awful. But one of the things that we've learned is, although we physically can't be together, Zoom and all the technology has been amazing. I've been everywhere. I've even been to Australia. So in some ways, we can embrace technology. It cuts down on travel. Sometimes I'd have 4 or 5 meetings a day with travel. So this will help a little. There's no substitute for physical contact, of course not. But also, I've managed to work as an employment lawyer. I've made use of modern technology for years to be able to do that. So how do I balance it? I'm probably not perfect, I'll be honest with you, but I'm doing the best that I can. And I'm just getting on with it. And it's all about the team at the board. We've got a fantastic team of honorary officers and staff, all dedicated and honoured to serve the community. And I care passionately. That's how.
Thank you. I think one of the things we've noticed at Liberal Judaism is the number of communities that have been able to participate in our central activities because of the online abilities. So, our meeting I talked about, we had representatives there from Copenhagen, from our community in Copenhagen, from Edinburgh, from Dublin, from Manchester, who haven't been able to have that same engagement with Liberal Judaism that they now have. And I wonder for the board how you're working to kind of harness that sense of being included that perhaps has increased since since with COVID, of people feeling like they're more represented or at least more heard? And is that something that you intend to hold on to and to increase?
Yes, when the virus started, we actually appointed Sarah Radavan. I don't know if you've come across Sarah yet, as our special COAC strength advisor for the regions. So we are absolutely wanting to make sure that we're not a London-centric organisation, and we've managed to reach people everywhere. And we want to continue through our membership changes that are going through our constitution shortly, to make sure we can reach all Jews. And we've even had our first board meeting on Zoom, our first in 260 years, with a lot of people. We've got another one coming up next Sunday. So we can do this, and we've seen how we can enable more people to be involved. And also, don't just forget people that are out of London, but we're also looking at elderly people. They don't need to lose contact as well. So we need to carry on to keep the best of what we've learned, and to build on that, to try and keep people as involved as much as we can in the future. But I am looking forward to seeing all our communities in person, I have to say. But
I think we are all looking forward to that. And I should say that one of the things that I've really appreciated is being able to see the Board of Deputies meetings, which have been streamed, and that was before COVID as well. So people should know that they're able to see those meetings and to engage there as well. Marie, I want to say thank you very much for being frank and open with us, and also for coming and being in our conversations with Liberal Judaism. If you've seen any of our previous conversations, you'll know that we can't let you leave without asking you about your mug. So far, we've asked all the people that have joined us what they're drinking from, and I wonder whether you'll share with us your mug and what the mug that you're drinking from.
This is very embarrassing, but it is as it is. These are my two princesses, my girls' mugs.
Oh, thank you, Marie. Thank you very much.
It's all about people. And can I just say one more thank you as well as thank you to you for everything you're doing. I'm so grateful, Rabbi Charlie. Can I also thank Leo Mindell, because as well as doing the technology for you today in Liberal Judaism, he is amazing. He does the technology and our plenary meetings for the Board of Deputies. And I'm really grateful for everything that he does for the community and what he makes possible. So I just wanted to say that too.
I think Leo Mindell has been one of the most valuable people within the Jewish community over the period of COVID. I'm sure before as well, but I think if people didn't know his name before, they certainly know it now in liberal circles. Yes, thank you very much, Leo. I want to remind everybody at home that if you've enjoyed our conversation, and if you're enjoying the resources that Liberal Judaism is bringing into your homes, the way that we're engaging with our communities, that you will think of going online to the Liberal Judaism website and making a donation. Really, it's your donations, continued or one-off, that are enabling us to continue to bring Liberal Judaism home. Thank you very much for being with us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you at the next of our conversations.
Thank you. God bless everyone and stay well. Thank you to you and all the Liberal Judaism team. Thank you.